Grammy's homemade Southern chicken cornbread dressing. Today, we are making Grammy's homemade dressing. For this recipe, you'll need chicken, vegetables, and cornbread. Don't worry, we are going to get how to make it all and create delicious cornbread, but one important thing we need to know is how much you plan on making. For this recipe, you will need 1 cup of each vegetable diced per cornbread. This means if you're making a small batch with 1 cornbread, you will need 1 cup of diced green onion, 1 cup of diced celery, and 1 cup of diced bell pepper. If you are doing a medium dressing, you will need 2 cups of each. And if you're cooking a large portion with 3 cornbreads for a big holiday meal, you will need 3 cups of each vegetable. Now let's talk about how much chicken you will need. For a small dressing, you can use 1 fryer chicken. These are whole chickens that range from 2.5 to 3 pounds. You would use 2 fryers or a hen for medium or large dishes. In this video, we made 2 cornbreads and used a hen. Grammy says the hen has big flavor and is her favorite. So of course, I wanted to use a hen. Now be warned, if you don't know how to properly cut up a whole chicken, I recommend watching a video on YouTube first. This was actually the most daunting task because I had never cut a whole chicken before. I had to call in my husband Blake for reinforcements. Another option is to buy leg quarters or boneless chicken. If you want the true version of Grammy's cornbread dressing, get a hen. You will need a large stock pot to boil a whole chicken, a smaller pot to boil eggs, maybe around 6 quarts, a pot to simmer your vegetables in, a cast iron skillet, a baking pan or disposable tin pans, a cutting board, knives, a fine mesh strainer or sifter, measuring cups and spoons, large and small bowls, spoons to mix, and a ranger oven. You also need a rag or kitchen towel and paper towels. A thermometer is going to be important too. You're going to need a large bowl or pan, or in our case, we used a small plastic tote to mix everything together. Optional items include wax paper. I use this to line the table and place the chicken on instead of more bowls. I use a pastry blender to cut my eggs. You're welcome to use one of those, or a fork works just as fine too. Lastly, I highly recommend having a friend because this is definitely a multi-hour process, and it's great to have someone to share the experience with because this is one recipe you'll want to share with your friends and pass on to your kiddos. For me, I have my husband Blake and my mom. Let's talk about grocery shopping. Here are the ingredients you will need. You'll need a chicken, the size depending on what size dish you'll be making like we discussed earlier, salt and pepper, chicken bouillon cubes or better than bouillon chicken base, Crisco shortening, enough to grease your cast iron skillet, vegetables, enough to make 1 cup diced per cornbread you plan on using. You'll need green onions, celery, and green bell peppers. Eggs, 2 eggs per cornbread, and optional boiled eggs if you like them in your dressing. Flour, self-rising and sifted, 1.5 cup per cornbread. Coarse cornmeal, 1.5 cup per cornbread. Sugar, 1/3 cup per cornbread. Baking powder, 1 tablespoon per cornbread. And canola oil, 1/3 cup per cornbread. Lastly, milk, 1.5 cups of milk for each cornbread. First, let's preheat the oven to 380 degrees for the cornbread while we prepare the hen. Let's tackle the hen. Cut the chicken appropriately. Leave the skin on. Place the chicken in the pot and add water to cover 1 inch above the chicken. We don't add the chicken to already boiling water because we don't want it to become rubbery. Add salt and pepper. Grammy says 3 good shakes. Now, if you're not sure about 3 good shakes, you can start with 1 teaspoon of each. Bring the chicken to a boil. After bringing to a boil, simmer over low heat. This helps to create juicy, tender chicken. Cooking over high heat will result in rubbery chicken. When cooking a chicken with the skin on, you will notice a layer of fat at the top. Skim off with a slotted spoon and cook until the internal temperature of the chicken is 165 degrees Fahrenheit. The time to boil a chicken will depend on the size. For 1 fryer chicken, it may take 45 minutes to an hour. It takes approximately 1.5 hours to boil a 3 to 4 pound fresh whole chicken. If the chicken is larger than 4 pounds, add 15 minutes per pound to the total cooking time. While the hen is boiling, we can start our cornbread. But let's finish discussing what to do with the chicken when it comes out, and we will move on to how to make the cornbread after. How do you know when the chicken is done boiling? You know when the whole chicken is done boiling when the internal temperature of the chicken will reach 165 degrees Fahrenheit. You will want to insert the meat thermometer into the thickest part of the chicken. I recommend the chicken thigh. Once your chicken is fully cooked, remove it and place on the side to cool. Taste the broth. It should taste like chicken noodle soup. If it needs more flavor, add 3 or 4 chicken bouillon cubes, or you can use Better Than Bouillon chicken base, like my husband Blake and I like. The base requires the stock to boil to dissolve. Once you have your chicken stock the flavor of your liking, remove from heat and use a fine mesh strainer to strain the stock into a bowl. We will use this stock later. Pro tip: save any unused stock from this recipe for soups or cooking. Stock in an airtight container in the fridge can store for 3 to 5 days, or you can freeze it for later. Now that you've strained your stock, your chicken may be cool enough for you to remove the skin, debone, and cut into little pieces. Once the chicken is cut, add it to a bowl and cover it with just enough stock to cover so that the chicken will not dry out while waiting on the cornbread to finish. We save the remaining stock as well to mix in at the end. Cornbread. You should be making your cornbread while the chicken is boiling. Your oven should be preheated from earlier to 380 degrees. It is important that if you are doing multiple batches that you mix each cornbread batch up individually, not one big batch. Why? I don't know. It's just what my mama said, and I listened to my mama. Grease the skillet with Crisco excessively, Grammy said. Mix dry ingredients together. 1.5 cups of self-raised sifted flour, 1.5 cups of coarse cornmeal, 1/3 a cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Then, once all of those are mixed, you add all the remaining wet ingredients. 1/3 a cup of canola oil, 2 eggs, 1 1/2 cup of milk. Pour into greased cast iron skillet. Cook for 35 to 45 minutes or until brown. While the cornbread is cooking, you should be starting your vegetables and boiling your eggs, but let's finish discussing what to do with your cornbread is finished. Have a kitchen towel or rag on your table or countertop with 1 paper towel laid across the top. Take the cornbread out of the oven and flip the pan upside down so the cornbread falls out of the skillet and onto the table. Now we let the cornbread cool. You can cut the cornbread to allow it to cool faster. Change the oven temperature to 300 so that will be ready for your dressing after you mix it up. Now let's talk about the vegetables. We will be including green onion, celery, and bell pepper in our dressing. Wash the onions and celery first. Cut off the small roots of the green onions. It's okay to use the white ends. Chop and dice to desired size. Grammy likes them large enough that they will not simmer away when cooked, but not too big either. This part is really about preference. Cut the roots off of the celery. Split the wide stalks to create smaller pieces. Chop or dice to desired size. Grammy says cut the leaves and all up for the dressing. When it comes to cutting the bell pepper, Grammy says cut the bell pepper into slices first to take the seeds out and then wash it. After washing, you can chop and dice to desired size. Remember, the amount of veggie depends on how big of a dish you're doing. You will need 1 cup of each veggie per cornbread you are making. Put all the chopped vegetables in a pot and cover them with water. Bring to a boil and let them simmer until they become tender. Usually this is around 20 minutes. In a separate pot, boil eggs if you would like to include them. The number really depends on how much egg you want in your dressing, and you'll be able to visualize this when we mix it all together. I think we used 8 eggs in our 2 cornbread dressing. Crumble, cut, or mash your eggs to your desired size and set aside. Putting it all together. Crumble the cornbread into a pan. Tear apart the large chunks, but it should not be finely crumbled. There should still be medium to small chunks of cornbread. Salt and pepper, as Grammy says, 3 good shakes. Add chicken with some of the stock. Because we used the whole hen and only 2 cornbreads, we portioned out some of the chicken and ended up adding more chicken in later, as you'll see. Add the eggs and veggies. This is the moment where you can hold back some of the ingredients if you want less, like eggs. Now you can mix it all together. Add stock as needed from your stock that you set aside. You should add enough stock so that when you mix it, none of the cornbread is dry. You want to have enough stock so that you do not have dry dressing, but you don't want it to look like soup. If you need more stock, you can add bouillon cubes or paste to water and heat it up on the stove to be able to have more stock. The process of mixing took around 4 or 5 minutes till we got it how we liked it. Seeing it mixed together, you can tell if you want to add more chicken or eggs. It's also important that at this part you taste the dressing to see if more salt or pepper is needed. Spray Pam in your baking dish, then pour in dressing. It's okay to use multiple pans if needed. You can freeze this dressing. Frozen dressing can keep roughly for 3 months. After 3 months, it starts to lose its freshness. When you freeze it and it's time for you to cook it again, thaw out the dressing and then follow the remaining steps. It's time to cook. Cook 1 hour on 300 degrees for a small dressing that used 1 cornbread. For larger sizes dressings, the cook time ranges from 2 to 2.5 hours. It's important that you stir the dressing periodically while cooking because it can get hard on the bottom, especially when using a deeper dish. Grammy says your oven should be at 300 degrees. Mama said she thought it was higher. When it came down to it for my medium batch, I ended up cooking mine a little crazy. I cooked it at 375 for 25 minutes, and then I stirred it, and I did 350 for 25 minutes, and then I stirred it, and then I did 325 for 25 minutes, and finally 300 for 25 minutes, and it came out just fine. But really though, just cook it and stir it every 25 to 30 minutes until it's cooked to your liking. The shorter you're cooking, the creamier it will be. The longer you cook it, or bake it, really, the more firm it will be. When it gets close to your liking, stir it and give it a little longer to brown on top. At my house, this is how we like it. Not too creamy, not too dry. Topping it with cranberry sauce and sharing it while laughing with friends and family.
Oh my God.
Said a couple hours. I'd stir it one more time, then put it in there and let it get brown like that on the top. Well, I don't know. Did y'all?
I stirred that little
taste
part.
it?
No. Well, I imagine I did taste a little bit. It's because it's hot.
Would y'all like those creamy or
A little more done.
you got the cranberry
Yeah, I do. It's in the refrigerator. I like cranberry cold.
too?
I'm excited about the family video we gonna make for the dressing. Can't wait to send it to everybody. You're missing by the edges here. It's like you're just scraping the top of it, basically. So what you're gonna do is bake it at 375 for 25 minutes. You take it out at 350 for 25 minutes. You take it out at 325 for 25 minutes. And the last 25 minutes you take it at 300. But we're not really sure. You just do a variation of any of it.